Creating the process to implement the devolution will require significant effort. At the same time, work will be underway for LGR planning, both here and boroughs and districts. Officers here are also working extremely hard on coping with precarious immediate financial future. We're already considering savings 25 Mark II. And I do not feel that managing elections is an additional burden that would be helpful at this time. Some concerns have been raised, I hear those, about postponing the elections, not cancelling, postponing the elections might create a democratic deficiency or that elections may never happen again. It is my understanding that the government can only delay the elections for 12 months, and there is plenty of precedent to consider in this. For example, during COVID elections were delayed, but did take place 12 months later. And I've got to be honest with you, in Basingstoke and Dean, our council offices were not firebombed. We did not have big public uprising about a lack of democracy. In fact, my recollection is the public were pretty damn pleased that as councillors we were getting on with the job.
And finally, Councillor Taylor, can I say I wholeheartedly agree with everything you've said, so congratulations. I think that's the first time I've agreed with the Socialists. Okay. Can I just say, the only people who have complained to me by email about the elections being deferred are not represented here. They're all from Reform. Now, I actually emailed them thinking they were just members of the public, which Reform aren't, of course. And one of them rang me back. And when I explained to him why we're doing this, he went, "Yeah, right, seems a good idea to me." And that was the end of the discussion. So I think the general public will be quite happy, and they won't even care whether we have an election in May or not. So let's not get too caught up in this. Now remember, this is financially led. We've hit the finance iceberg, and this ship is going down as we speak. I've listened to our Treasurer for the last few years and watched him basically get older, trying to save us the money so that we can stay in position. But it's just not going to happen. We have taken £500 million out of our budget, and it's not enough.
Have I had concerns raised to me about the election possibly being deferred for a year? No, I haven't, but similar to Councillor Glen, I've received a number of what I'd call political templates. I think we all know where they've come from, as Councillor Glen suggested. But to my mind, delay, if we delay by a year, and that means we get it right, that is the way to go. So I can't support the amendments, but I will be voting for the motion as it stands. And if I could say the justification for that was very well made by Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Chairman.
As acknowledged in the White Paper, England has one of the most centralised power structures of any country in the developed world. So whilst I welcome the principle of devolution, I am concerned that the deal put before us by the government risks taking decision-making further away from local people rather than empowering them. And these risks need to be highlighted. In particular, how will local communities get heard and who will hold mayors to account? On mayors, there's a real risk that we could have a mayor that is only supported by a third of our residents. Some could say that that is already the case, as councillors can get elected with only a third of residents' support. But the big difference here is the amount of power that the mayor will hold. The mayor will have significantly more power than local councillors or current local council leaders or even our local MPs. More power over planning, for example, where to build a new town in Hampshire if this is needed to meet the government's new house building targets. More power over transport, more power over economic development, more power over climate change measures, and so on. More power in one person's hands may be considered a good thing if you agree with that person's point of view. However, if you don't agree with the mayor's plan, the new structure means that there is little opportunity to object. Changes is how will the local communities get heard? There is a real risk that this devolution deal accelerates the concentration of power into the hands of an ever smaller political elite. For example, of the current 11 elected Metro mayors, 10 are from Labour. so perhaps it's not a surprise that Labour are so enamoured with this model. Meanwhile, every year, more people are becoming disillusioned with politics and the political process. The feeling that you are not being represented in the decision-making process is a big part of this issue. Whether intentional or not, the proposed local government reorganisation risks making this situation worse. Combining district authorities together into unitary authorities is likely to mean much larger wards. This, combined with the discredited first-past-the-post voting system, favours the incumbent and makes it harder for a range of voices to be heard, which in turn risks increasing disillusionment with politics. The world has changed. Our residents are no longer just red and blue, nor are they just red, blue, orange and green. We have a fantastic range of people and voices in our country. Our political system needs to modernise so that it can properly represent the people of this country with all our differing views and perspectives. I would like to see genuine decentralisation of power from government, with decisions being made as close as possible to the communities they affect. And that uses a proportional representation voting system to ensure that all the different voices of our residents get heard. So overall, whilst I welcome the principle of devolution, I am uncomfortable with the offer that's on the table before us. Devolution and reorganisation must genuinely empower local communities, not distance them from the decision-making processes, as this proposal risks doing.
But democracy, I think, is something which is a very fragile candle that is easily snuffed out. It's one of, if you ask the people of Thailand and Myanmar and Bangladesh about council elections, they'll give you an answer. And it won't be an answer perhaps we'd like. I had the privilege to be part of international monitoring operations for monitoring elections in the former Soviet Union 20-odd years ago on behalf of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe and part of international missions. And I had the privilege and honour to be in Maiden Square in Kyiv 20 years ago when Yanukovych stole an election from Yushchenko and there were demonstrations there. I had the privilege to be in Minsk when Alexander Lukashenko stole an election from residents. I had the privilege of walking between tanks in Baku in Azerbaijan when the outgoing president stole an election for his son. We need to think really, really carefully before we think about snuffing out the fragile candle that is democracy. There are choices, there are options. We're being given a choice here on this issue. Nick is right to say that ministers have expressed a preference. They have expressed a preference for us to postpone elections. They haven't made it a requirement. They've given it to us as a choice. Cynically, you could say they've given it to us as a choice that they can blame us. You know, and that would be a canny, natty thing to do for a Labour minister. Blame the Conservative county councils for cancelling elections, because then we can say it's their fault, not ours. Well, that may be a cynical view, but it is sometimes how politics works. And we need to understand that consequence of postponing elections. I believe it's most likely that there won't be county council elections ever again. Likewise, I believe there's a high likelihood there won't even be district elections in 2026 either. It is convenient for government at the moment to say no elections in 2025. Well, it's going to be even more convenient in a year's time when the shadow authorities are being planned properly, when devolution arrangements are being put in place ahead of the mayoral election in May 2026. Across those three issues, devolution, local government reorganisation, elections, I think we should go with the devolution. I think we should work through how local government reorganisation should work and get the best possible local government for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight in the long term. But we should equally say no to postponing elections, because democracy is a fragile candle that is easily snuffed out.
We all have mandates from May 2021. Boris Johnson was said to be popular on that day, and a lot has happened since then. Not just at national level with Ed Davey riding on a jet ski to the Lib Dem Party conference, but also with subsequent district and borough elections in the county and the ongoing challenges here on finances and decisions made. Whilst I appreciate this may be a free vote, it could be passed with the will of the majority party members here, even if objected to by the opposition, including the largest opposition party. Whilst I do appreciate elections cost time and money, and the pre-election period potentially creates issues with devolution and local government reform consultation processes, I would still say that it's a slippery slope of setting a precedent where we say it's okay to deny the public their voice for operational and capacity reasons, referencing what Councillor House said earlier about where elections have been cancelled and postponed before. We are told this postponement is only for 1 year, and this is all the current legislation allows. But I am concerned that if the plans are for unitary elections in 2026 or 2027, we would never have a Hampshire County Council election again. We would surely be squatting until the council is abolished, possibly more than halfway into what would have been our new terms if in 2027 or beyond. It should also be noted that the districts and the boroughs actually run the Hampshire County Council election. And the workload sits with the districts and boroughs in that respect. If we request to cancel our elections, but another upper-tier council applies to go on the fast track and is accepted without asking to postpone elections, and it later transpires that they are at no disadvantage to us and actually moving forward at a similar pace, including, I should say, any council that doesn't apply for the fast track now, but ends up running at a similar pace, this would surely be extremely regrettable and not reflect well on Hampshire County Council at all. On a personal level, I would want to hold my own seat in any council because the public decide I'm the right person to be their elected representative, not because they're denied the right to make that choice. I would rather lose an election because people want someone else than win by default. For an all-out election, I would always want to take my case to the public I work for, and in the past couple of days, many have expressed grave reservations to me about this matter, even when I've explained the rationale. And I have explained the rationale because it's very easy